Good evening, everybody, and thank you so much for joining us this evening for a very special session for Lean in Belfast and Lean in Dublin networks, where we are joined by Dr. Iryna Rybinkina from Medic Smart Aid, and also who's joined us from Ukraine. Excuse me for being slightly emotional as I introduce this, because we're all in a real flux of emotional admiration for the work that Iryna is doing, but also for us all coming together as Lean in Belfast and Lean in Dublin networks. We want to offer our support as women who are trying to make a change in the world, but also some emotional support to you, and also to bring some practical ways in which we can all help the work and the efforts that you're doing on the front line, Iryna. I'm delighted to hand over to my co-host this evening, Dorcas Crawford, who is the Lean in Dublin president and conflict management consultant. She's going to lead the conversation this evening. And I think, like everyone, we want to know what we can do that can be supportive and helpful as we support our fellow women in Ukraine right now. Over to you, Dorcas, and thank you very much, everyone, for joining Lean in Belfast and Lean in Dublin networks this evening.
Thank you very much for joining us. I also, as Nuala said, it's been an emotional few days as we've managed to set this up. This kind of arose because we had a Lean In call with our co-founders of Lean In, Cheryl Sandberg and Rachel Thomas, last week, who really highlighted the need for us as an organisation and as Lean In people who support each other, mostly women, but we do have male allies and men joining us too, which is great. And they sent out a very emotive appeal for any of us who could possibly help or who knew really good practical ways to help to join in and support. And so we, as Lean In Networks Dublin and Belfast, put our heads together, and through a very fortuitous lunch that I had with Eva Grossman, who you can see on the screen, who's often at the heart of a lot of these events. Eva and I had lunch last Thursday, and I said, what can we do to help? And she obviously has a great insight into what's going on in Ukraine. And she said, oh, I have a contact who we might be able to help. So in the space of about 24 hours between Saturday afternoon and Sunday afternoon, we managed to put this together. Thanks mostly to our IT amazing person, Gail Alexander, who has just pulled all sorts of stops out to get it going. But of course, as Nuala said, most thanks goes to Iryna, who we suddenly have become friends over WhatsApp in the last few days, a few of us. And Iryna, despite her crazy schedule and all that she's doing in Ukraine at the minute, has been managing to answer our WhatsApps and to support us in setting this up, and has been more than willing to give her time. So as Nuala said, we've kept it to half an hour, not least because Iryna's time is so incredibly precious. Also, we thought that will just be enough to give everybody some insight into what's going on, and then give us time to have a real call to action, which we'll have at the end, where details will be shared of Iryna's organisation and how we can all help. But enough from me. What's really important is for us to hear from Iryna. So as Nuala said, this is Dr. Iryna Rybinkina, who is a cardiothoracic anaesthetist who trained as a doctor initially in Ukraine and then moved to the UK, where she qualified initially in surgery, I think, and then ultimately in anaesthetics, and has been working in the health service in the UK until a short time ago, when she and her family, her two little children who are 9 and 2, boy and a girl, made what they thought was a life-changing decision to move to New Zealand for a year. And then very shortly after they'd moved there, life changed completely in a way that they had never anticipated. And Iryna answered the call, which I suspect was in her heart as much as her head and her homeland, and went back to Ukraine, and is now, as we've said in the title and everywhere else here, on the front line. So Iryna, can I ask you first of all if you can tell us a bit about your own story just briefly, because we know you want to get to the important part, which is how we can help you in your current work. So just tell us briefly, well, if it's possible to do it briefly, because it's been quite a story for you to study medicine, and how you got to where you got today.
Good evening. I can see a lot of my friends, my colleagues. Good evening, Ireland, and the rest of the world that stands with Ukraine. That world that was reduced to silence yesterday, when they saw with their own eyes the cruelty and atrocities committed by the Russian soldiers against Ukrainian women, children, and land coming out of Irpin and Bucha and Borodanka. The world has changed for me personally, and it would never be the same from the moment when the first Russian tanks crossed the Ukrainian border. When the first missiles flew into my homeland, I could no longer stay away after working abroad for nearly 20 years and look at my country burning in flames far, and I returned to Ukraine. I packed my life in New Zealand within a few hours and flew to Ukraine, leaving my husband and 2 little kids in the Netherlands. They were my world before the war started. Now my world has expanded to the size of Ukraine and the hundreds of thousands of people that we help, because I can't do otherwise. And when I speak about us, I speak about our smart medical aid team and charity and the work my team is doing to purchase and distribute medical and tactical equipment, evacuate children, and help with refugees. And I put medical first because I am a doctor and saving people is my profession. It might not seem like the right time to talk about me and myself, but I want to be honest with you, and I want to share my personal story because my experience shaped me into the person I am today, a person who is able to deeply empathize and help Ukrainian people in these terrible days of war. I graduated with honors from the Bogomolets National Medical University in 2004, a long time ago, in the capital of Ukraine, Kiev, a city that I love with all my heart. A city whose citizens hide away day and night to the sound of air sirens and flee to shelter in fear for their lives and the lives of their children. In 2004, I wanted to become a cardiothoracic surgeon. But when I was sent for my internship into one of the hospitals in Kiev, the head of my department told me that my place as a woman was to translate scientific articles and not to operate. So I left Ukraine. I was 21. I was determined to become a surgeon and nothing else. I left with a one-way ticket. And even my own dad told me that I would be back within a week. I was very lucky to meet some amazing people who supported me and inspired me to work harder and harder and achieve what I wanted in life. Little did I know it would take a year and a half of exams to achieve my medical registration in the UK, but I did manage to do it. I was broke, sometimes hungry, very badly dressed, and I was almost losing my hope to getting a training job in the UK. And perhaps that is why it resonates with me when I think of those people who remain hungry today in blockaded Mariupol, and those who lost their hopes in Kharkiv and were forced to hide in cold shelters from Russian missile strikes. I still remember the shame I had when I was coming to the checkout in Lidl and I miscalculated how much I had. So it felt like everyone was judging me. I was over the moon to get my first job. Finally, I was going to be training as a surgeon. Over the years of training to be a surgeon, I got bullied a lot. One of my consultant surgeon colleagues once logged into his emails in theater and jokingly asked me if he should log in on the website Brides from Ukraine and order another one of me. Another one constantly was making comments about the way I dressed and openly laughed at me. It was always something about my accent, or being direct, or just being a woman. I could never understand. Over the years, it got to a point where the toxic environment and just the inability to really do what I wanted, being in theatre, got to me. They like to joke about seeing the light. So this is when we talk about changing career from surgery to anesthetics. And I did that. I trained in anesthesia and intensive care for 10 years across 8 different hospitals, major trauma centers and centers of excellence. And I have CCT'd to be a cardiothoracic anesthesia and intensive care doctor. I know that I work for the people of Ukraine, and I know that I can help with our smart medical aid where it can be done now. But I realize how many Ukrainian cities and people are left without help and are one step away from death. I know that atrocities continue in Kharkiv, Mariupol, Chernihiv, and dozens of towns that are completely destroyed today. I cannot look out here without tears about children who are killed, about women that are raped and burned, about the men who were tortured to death. I am here on the ground and I'm asking you to help me to help Ukraine. Help Ukrainian children and women, help civilians whose lives are destroyed by this war. Thank you for coming. And as we say in Ukrainian, Slava Ukraini.
Iryna, I'm just going to give you a break for a minute. We can't begin to imagine just how hard that is to tell that story. And thank you for being so incredibly brave. Clearly, your middle name is Resilience, because I don't know how, first of all, even to get to where you got to against so many odds, you've managed to do that. And then to take it to another different level and cope with what you're coping with at the minute, and to give so much. On behalf of all of us, thank you, and we're just completely in awe of everything you're doing.
I'm so sorry. I'm just
please don't be sorry. Please don't apologize. I can't even imagine how you can actually communicate as well as you did. So thank you so much for taking the time to do that. It's just such a powerful story. We've all seen the absolutely horrendous things going on, particularly in the last 2 days, as worse and worse atrocities are discovered, and you're seeing it at first hand. So our hearts absolutely go out to you. Our support goes out to you, emotionally, strength, every way we can. And so I think the only thing we can do is ask you to tell us a bit more about Smart Medical Aid now, and tell us how we can actually practically help, because we don't want to be doing the wrong things. There are so many possibilities for what people can do at the minute, but we want to make sure that we use the information from you at the front line to make sure that what we are doing is meaningful, that any donations we make, whatever we do in kind or in money, are going to the right place. So can I ask you to tell us a bit about that? I'm going to share the screen because we have a slide now with the details of Smart Medical Aid, and while we do that, you can maybe talk us through some of that, if that's okay.
Yeah, absolutely. I think yesterday was one of the hardest days, because when the Russian troops were deserting the Kiev region, we discovered I'm not going to even touch on what we discovered, but yesterday we all felt numb. I have an information firsthand because these people, they come to my offices, they ask for help and they tell me about these horrendous stories. Smart Medical Aid was formed because of what has happened in Ukraine. I mean, I've been volunteering and teaching in Ukraine and bringing medical aid of millions and millions of pounds ever since 2014. But when the scale war started, I thought, and I am really grateful for my husband to support my decision, even though he's struggling a lot with it and he's obviously worried. But knowing that my children are safe gives me strength to look after other children. So, I'm so sorry. I told myself I'm not going to cry. But we've been doing a lot of medical evacuation, and we hear these stories of the 6-year-old whose mom was raped in front of him for a week and killed, and then a 6-month-old whose parents were shot in front of him, and he has some horrendous injuries. And we've managed to evacuate like a 4-year-old who was playing at the playground, and a missile flew on that playground and he had a completely smashed spine and he wasn't going to walk. So yesterday I had a quote from the professor from the Czech Republic saying, "This child is going to walk." So we have our successes. Our organization basically has a couple of branches. So we work towards procuring, buying, or getting donated equipment and to the most regions that are needed. I have the intelligence reports and I concentrate my efforts where I know it's going to be very difficult and the injured would come flooding into the hospitals. I plan accordingly, and we've been very successful working with Ireland, like the support from Ireland being so overwhelming, it can fill the whole Ukraine. The second branch is basically tactical medicine, because we understand that every tourniquet that we provide to the front line, and that is a device to stop the bleeding, it saves a life. With another couple of organizations and the funds from Alexander Kasavan and Pavernis Javim, so there are lots of people come together. I managed to buy 40,000 of those, and that is 40,000 saved lives. We've almost distributed those at the moment. We've got only a few thousand left, and we've been making a lot of first aid kits, but these are not like the car ones that we have. These are the ones with a tourniquet and a chest seal and a decompression needle. They are there to save one or maybe a couple of lives in a trained hands. So training is another thing that we provide. Also, we work with refugees. We don't call them refugees. They are displaced people. They're people that flee the war and hopefully one day will be able to come back when we rebuild Ukraine. So we work a lot on the border. We now, because of Nora and Care UK, purchased a disabled van to help get some people across the border, because there's like a walking corridor. When I entered Ukraine on, I think, the 9th of March, and I saw what was happening on the border, it terrified me. In -10, these half-conscious children and women who just jumped out half naked of the burning and bombed buildings were queuing up for 10 hours to cross the border. Children, the neonates, were carried in plastic shopping bags, and the horrendous scene that we were seeing on the border are just nothing I've seen before. And I have been trained in military, and like I taught military over the years, but I mainly did civilian work. We have loads of focus on also humanitarian aid, so bringing food, and actually at the moment there are lots of people starving. So whenever we hear that the medical equipment going somewhere, we just stock the van with whatever we can find and send it to the people. I mean, it's briefly what we do. Actually, my team has grown over the last, I don't know how many days I've been here, actually. It seems like yesterday, but it feels like it's been a long time, and it doesn't seem there's an end to the conflict. So we as a family actually made a decision that I am going to put on hold my medical career and stay in Ukraine for as long as needed to facilitate the work that we're doing.
Iryna, thank you. That is such a great insight into what's going on. I don't think we could have found a better way of hearing exactly what is happening and what is needed. Your courage, you are the very definition of courage, I think. And whilst it's hard for us to hear and read, we know nothing compared to what you're seeing and doing. Can I ask you then, is the best way for us to help to go on to the link that is also in the chat and donate, to go on and look at your website and see what's needed, and if we can, some of us may be able to make bigger amounts than others or more meaningful donations. And I know that on that link there are also ways of contacting you to find out if there is a particular project we can actually support as opposed to just donating money. Is money the best way for us to help at the minute? So
at the moment I would say yes, because even making a list of the equipment, the situation is so volatile. By the time I'm finished writing it, it's no longer valid. Yeah. What we find is there are lots of projects. For example, Shapetivka was evacuating little kids with all the bullets, and they didn't have a C-arm. So we approached Medical Aid Ireland, and we asked for actually donation to buy like a second-hand C-arm. And we are going to transport it this week to Ukraine. The same with like a CT scanner for one of the central hospitals, where Irpin hospital was bombed and completely destroyed. All the doctors moved all the injured to a central Kiev hospital, and now it just doesn't have the facilities to support the skills that they have. So we move around so quickly, and sometimes the plan we come up for a day in the morning looks completely different from what it is in the afternoon. With the tactical medicine, actually every country is currently fighting for the supplies. Some countries are herding even the tourniquets. There's a lot of fake ones. We have a testing center in our offices. So I know none of them are good, apart from the ones that I've already bought. And now I'm buying a stock for April and May. And if I don't pre-order, we will have nothing, because other countries who have more financial capabilities easily can buy the whole stock. But it's just I developed relationships with these companies, and I sort of beg, borrow, and steal. And I use my influence to get the items for the best price and to make sure they get to the right place. Because you have to understand that everyone who comes to Ukraine, they think of this war, I don't know, some kind of like a heroic act. But to be honest, Ukraine, as it is in Europe, it is in the sense of what we have available, for example, in the hospital, sometimes it's more Africa than Europe. So whenever I worked for NHS and I spoke about my passion and my projects in Ukraine, everyone criticized me. And I used to say, you know what, like you have your project on Zambia with children, and Ukraine is my Zambia. Like I always felt that this is the only way and the only project I would ever want to support. And you know what, I think I am the right person for this job right now.
You know, Iryna, in Ireland, we have a phrase that you may not know, but it's very simple. It's no better woman. And I cannot think of anybody better to be doing what you're doing. We want to send you so much respect and so much awe for what you're doing. And also, if we can support you, we'll keep in touch in terms of just your own morale and helping you to know that there are lots of us here who have your back, as the Americans would say, but are just behind you and supporting you when you're missing out on that contact with your family and with your friends and missing out on your social media. You were telling us earlier about having to shut all of that down. So personal messages, obviously, without inundating you, we're here to do that as well. Iryna, if it's okay with you, so I hope everybody has picked up the link. We'll put it in a recording ultimately, which we'll send out here as well. And it's also in the chat if anybody would like to take a note of it. And we'll also send it to make sure anybody who needs it, just contact any of our team, Nuala, me, Eva, Gail, and we'll be able to provide you with it if you've missed it for any reason. But simple title, Smart Medical Aid, and you can go on and do that. We're almost out of time, but I think it would be nice to just check. I think Nuala has been looking at the chat to see if there are any questions that people have specifically that she might give to you to address, Iryna. So I'll hand back over to Nuala.
Yeah.
I think she's just unmuting at the minute. Let's start. Okay, Nuala, you're... Oh. You're unmuted.
Yeah, so I had to be unmuted there. Iryna, the posts we have received are really of support and admiration. There's a lot of lovely comments about how strong you are, and some practical ones that the link to Smart Medical Aid will answer the questions. Or there's a question around whether you're working clinically or heading up logistics of distributing the aid, and I imagine it's a bit of both, right? Or is there, that's one question from Natalie.
Unfortunately, if I go and perform an anesthetic and I am gone for a couple of hours, in that time, I could find $3 million and find the equipment for the whole hospital or arrange an evacuation of 2 neonates. So my time is so precious. I really do miss medicine. But if I even come out like in a meeting for an hour, so much happens that I cannot afford at the moment to go and practice medicine. I do help with advice, and like with the children that we evacuated, I looked after them myself. And I felt I was the most qualified person at the time. And also the problem is my medical license. I've spent 20 years in the UK. I don't have a medical license in Ukraine, and I'm not allowed to practice. So I'm working on getting some paperwork here, but it's not the top of my priority at the moment, because at the moment, this organization needs to build a network, needs to build the donations and work with bigger organizations and trying to give people information. For example, what happened with International Red Cross, who came and who took all the donations. And even when I approached some companies, they said, oh, we've donated £100,000 to a more reputable organization like International Red Cross. And what we've seen here, they even withdrawn from the border when it was -12, and we begged them not to remove the tent because they felt their reputation would be damaged. And then they do nothing. They have offices on the first floor in Ukrainian Catholic University, and there's so many details of their just inability to do anything in this country that it breaks my heart, because I know what I could have done with that money.
Okay. Well, I think you've just articulated exactly why your time is best spent getting the practical aid and the donations and the funding for your organisation. And we will do what we can to spread the word, and we've had a great response. The messages from those on the call this evening have been of great support. There's an offer here from a DT who is a coach, and she's happy to offer any support and safe space to you and to anyone around you that may need it, and realizing that you're so isolated and so dedicated to the work that you're doing. We realize your time is so precious, and we are very grateful for you for sharing so openly and honestly and vulnerably with us this evening. I think that it's very tough to be watching and listening, and it's even tougher for you to be in situ, but you have a lot of love from us across Lean Belfast and Lean Dublin networks. We will follow up with any of the comments and any of the links that have been shared, and keep talking to us so we can spread the word across the amazing network of women and our male allies across our networks, and we do what we can.
Thank you.
I just want to also thank Eva Grossman for bringing you to us and for her involvement this evening. And it's no surprise that Eva is, the founder and the lead in the Centre for Democracy and Peace Building. And Eva, thank you so much as well for facilitating this evening. We're all here to support you, Iryna, and your team. And please keep in touch with us, and we'll be in touch. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you so much, ladies. I mean, as a woman, I can say that we all have our personal stories and things that we had to overcome. But, as a Ukrainian, I would say I feel like anyone would have done the same thing because of what is happening here. It's people just come together in the greatest time of need, and what Russian army is doing on Ukrainian land right now, it's not even Afghanistan. Like, it's what the cruelty of these people. I don't even know if it's people. They were caught in Kiev, but they're coming with full pockets of condoms, and my heart breaks every time I hear a story of the cruelty to women and children. And I feel like whatever I do or my team does is never going to be enough. And these children who are in mutiny, who lived in the underground for weeks, they come out, and I relate, and I look at them as they were my children, and we just need this to stop. And I don't know how the world can look at this and continue watching us die and be raped and killed and burnt. I personally feel like my even faith in God had a major blow, because I don't believe he would allow this to happen. And we are placed in a Ukrainian Catholic university, and I see and I work with a lot of priests, because some aid in the surrounded areas can only be distributed by priests. And when they talk to me, they say that I'm allowed to question that these questions I can ask. And I'm asking them every day. So I'm really grateful. I don't need to cry, but it's just there's no way anyone can look at this and not cry.
Yeah. Iryna, we're very conscious of your time, and this is obviously a huge emotional discussion for you in front of a lot of people who you don't know, but we are really grateful for you for being so honest. And crying isn't weakness. Crying is a sign that you've been strong for too long. And we will personally, I'll keep you in my prayers, and I'm sure whether whoever we believe in, whatever we believe in, we're all sending you an awful lot of love and strength and support at this time. And maybe that will give you a little moment of peace to smile so beautifully. But we're going to let you go now, and we'll ask you to stay on for a few moments, and we'll thank you everybody for joining. We will be in touch with contact details and practical help, and please do connect with myself, Dorcas, Ava, Gail, anyone from the Lean in Belfast and Dublin networks, and we will keep you updated and posted on any further information of how you can practically help in the front line in the war that's going on from wherever we find ourselves in the world today. Thank you so much, and thank you, Dorcas, for being so eloquent with your question and the Q&A.
Stay safe.
Any messages you want us to send out, we'll do that. So
thank you
so
so
much.
much.
Really important work, and thank you for doing it on behalf of all of us.